Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the live workshop session organized by Supply Chain Talks. The topic today is supplier relationship management, and it's basically an introduction session. We'll try to go briefly and quickly through the main concepts of supplier relationship management, commonly known as SRM. So let's begin. Before we actually begin, I would just like to make a comment that I would appreciate that all those who have joined so far in the session and who will join as well. Uh, Please feel free to communicate with me via the chat box. Leave your comments if you have any questions during the session on any topic. If you would like to know something about, just make a comment and I will look into it and I will answer. If there are general questions, I will try to cater to all the questions at the end of the session. As also initially brief, this session is a certificate session. At the end of this workshop, I will be sharing a link to the quiz for this workshop. Complete the quiz. It's just a simple 6 questions online quiz. Uh, you need to score at least 80%. That is, you need to score at least 5 or 6 right to be eligible to get the certificate of completion for this workshop. So thank you. So let's start. Let me have my coffee. Okay. So let's begin. Let me share. So to start off with, as I hope all of you have joined, they do know who I am. My name is Numan Ali. I am the kind of founder and CEO of Supply Chain Talks. Supply Chain Talks is basically a supply chain consultancy. And under this platform, I do provide trainings and I try to give back to the society by conducting these free online workshops so that I may be able to share my operational knowledge, my experience with the supply chain community across the globe. So let's start with our session on SRM. I like to start my session by defining what are the learning objectives of this session. So it's basically 5 learning objectives. The first one is that to understand the role of a supplier within a supply chain. The second is to appreciate the evolution of the concept of supplier relationship management. The third is to confidently approach and manage the supplier relationship management process. Fourth is equip yourself with the right strategies to enhance supplier relationship management. There are many strategies. We will try to touch at each of the strategies briefly for your understanding. And the last but not the least is to identify the advantages of supply relationship management for your organization, not just for the supply chain management function, but and overall the benefits that it gives to the organization. But before we go on and touch the topic itself, I have a strong belief that before you start touching any topic on supply, any topic or any part of supply chain management, one needs to first understand itself what is supply chain management. I will not be taking too much time on this part. I will just show a simple depiction of supply chain management and help you understand and appreciate where does supplier relationship management falls. So most of you would be knowing what CRM is, customer relationship management. A lot of organizations give it a lot of attention. There are a lot of softwares that companies, deploy. They talk about the sales funnel. They talk about opportunities. They talk about the contracts with the customers and all that. The same that is on the upstream of the supply chain for an organization when an organization is dealing with its customers. On the downstream part of it, every organization deals with a certain set of suppliers, both on the first tier and also on the second tier. Having said that, so basically, supplier relationship management happens on this part, uh, on this part. If you can see, the linkage between the organization, the entity, the buyer with its suppliers, and to some extent where it is needed, also to the level of their second tier suppliers as well. So this is where SRM stands. So just to give you an perspective from a total supply chain management concept where SRM lies. So before we talk about SRM and we go into its details, the process itself and its definitions and all that, first we need to understand what exactly is a supplier. Let me see. Sorry. Where is my thing? Okay. So basically, a supplier is the point in the supply chain where the chain begins. So this is the starting point of the supply chain itself. This is from where everything starts from. Supplier provides raw materials, semi-finished products, or services that are converted into finished products and goods or support organizations in operations. When I say support organization, I mean the services which they are acquired, that they also support in the operational activities of the organization, not just the raw materials, but services as well. The third part of this is that a supplier can also, this is an important thing, supplier can also be the starting point of the information flow within the supply chain. What it means is that the information starts coming in. What are the prices? When is the delivery? What raw materials are available? What kind of supplies are available? Or what different options are available, especially when you are doing product development, when you are doing cost optimization, when you are doing supply chain even management. All these things, the information needs to flow in, and that information starts to flow in from the supplier side. I'm not saying that this is the only part that the information flows in. Information flow within the supply chain. If I can show you the previous slide, information flow is on both directions. Fine, it's not just coming in from here, it also goes from the supplier upstream as well, to supplier to the organization and onwards. Suppliers may also have suppliers or partners who provide them with raw materials and services. This is what I was showing in the image earlier, that the first tier suppliers and the second tier suppliers. So a supplier can also have its own supplier. So any organization, an organization is a supplier to another organization. So our finished goods become the raw material of the other organization. So when we are selling our finished good, that becomes the raw materials for the other organization. So in this scenario, we would become the seller and the other organization would become the buyer. So the roles are depending from where you are looking in the supply chain, the roles are defined accordingly then. So now we looked at what is actually a supplier. Now we are going to look at what is the different types of suppliers available. This is not the completely, this is just a depiction. I have tried to divide the type of suppliers into 5 categories. So this is just for you guys to understand and appreciate the different categories of suppliers. One is the wholesalers and distributors, trading companies, manufacturers, import sources, service providers. I'm not going to into detail of this because this is just to help you understand and understand the different categories of suppliers. Now, coming to the main topic of our workshop today, supplier relationship management. But before we go into that, the important thing is from where did it come from? Who came up with the concept of supplier relationship management? Who basically initiated this thinking process that suppliers are important enough that we need to establish a strong relationship, a long-term relationship, and also not just to establish it, but also to manage it. Well, the crown for this achievement, or the crown for this concept, goes to a consultant from McKinsey. In 1983, he, in an article for Harvard Business Review, HBR, the article was named as "Purchasing Must Become Supply Management." His name was Peter Kraglitz. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly. He is the one who initiated the concept of supplier relationship management. What he said in his article was, and what he did after that, the matrix which he defined based on this article, was, he said in his article, instead of simply monitoring current developments, management must learn to make things happen to its own advantage. This calls for nothing less than a total change of perspective from purchasing and operating function to supply management. So I hope you are able to understand what he means. This is an essential to the understanding of SRM. Relationships need to be strategic. Relationships, they need to be strategic in nature. They need to be growth focused. That's something that spend managers, that is something that spend manager, and what I mean by spend managers are the people who are responsible for the buying purpose, or deciding how the spend of an organization, how the capital spend of an organization would be managed. Spend managers and senior management should never forget whether they are buying physical materials or softwares or services. So that is very critical. So based on this perspective, he came up with the Kraljic matrix, which basically defines. It's a matrix which four different. It divides the suppliers or the product or the materials into four areas, which is mapped against on the vertical axis, profit impact, and on the horizontal axis against supply risk. So the strategic items he defined were based on high profit impact and high supply risk, were key products, services. And the goal is to ensure long-term availability and global suppliers should be developed. On the other hand, with a low profit impact but still a high supply risk, bottleneck items. So complete different items with source of supplies, main good relationship with existing sorry, maintain good relationship with existing suppliers and actively develop new and niche suppliers. Bottleneck is something where there's a monopolistic or there's limited sourcing. So this is where you need to strongly develop your supplier relationships. On the other hand, on the left side of the horizontal axis, with a high profit impact and a low supply risk, the leverage items, standard commodities with abundant source of suppliers. This is where an organization would utilize their purchasing power. On the lower left or the lower bottom of this matrix, where the profit impact is also low and the supply risk is also low, which are the non-critical items. Low value items, purchasing process should be decentralized. I'll give you a very simple example for this. You might not think in this direction, but think about consumables for an industry, for any organization. A consumable as simple as paper. It is needed for operations. You need it. If the paper finish in the copying machine on the printer, works kind of stops. You need to print out job orders. You need to print out quotations or different things. You need the paper for operations, but it's a non-critical item. There are plenty of suppliers. So the focus on such items is comparatively low, and they are low value. They do not impact the profit margins. So something to think about for all of you. Now, since now we have discussed the evolution from where SRM came from, so let's have a look at how SRM is defined. So the definition states for SRM, and this is taken from Apex Dictionary, the recent edition, which is, I believe, 2020 or 2021. And it states that a comprehensive approach to managing an enterprise's interactions with the organizations that supply the goods and services the enterprise uses. So it's a comprehensive. It's the interactions, the relationship, the contracts, the engagement, the feedback process. All of this is part of the SRM process. The goal of SRM is to streamline and make more effective the processes between an enterprise and its suppliers. And this is when we will go into the strategies, you will understand what is meant by this. In addition to this, SRM is often associated with automating procure-to-pay, or commonly known as P2P business processes, evaluating supplier performance, exchanging information with suppliers. An e-procurement system is often an example of an SRM family of applications. Exchanging information with suppliers, that is the feedback process. When you do the evaluation, before you do the evaluation at the contract defining stage itself, you define the SLAs, the service level agreement, the different KPIs against which a supplier would be evaluated. You define those, you manage those, you implement them, and then you start evaluating your suppliers against that. And it has to be a closed loop environment, that what you evaluate, you do your analysis and you share that analysis with your suppliers. And this is how a healthy SRM process can be achieved and maintained. And when we talk about the e-procurement system or the procurement tools, this is a topic that I do extensively go into detail in my procurement workshops, which I do time to time. The plan is for that procurement workshop to happen probably mid of June. An announcement will be made on the Supply Chain Talks LinkedIn page eventually for the mid-June session. It will be a 2-day workshop, approximately 14 to 15 hours of session. Now, moving ahead. So, what are the goals of supplier relationship management? If you have any questions in between, let me check if there have been any questions which has been asked. Okay, let me take this question. First of all, this question has been put forward by Aditya Gaikwad. I hope I'm getting your name correct. Is it right? First year customer means retailer or wholesaler? Correct me if I'm wrong. Your understanding is correct. See, the first year customer is anyone from whom to whom the organization sells its product at the first level. A first year customer can even be a consumer. For example, I'll give you an example back from my home country, Pakistan. I used to work with Sanofi Pharma. Next to our plant, there was a confectionery manufacturing unit. And at the entrance, next to the entrance, there was a small factory outlet. And from the factory outlet, you could go and buy boxes of the different biscuits and cakes which were produced daily. Now, I am not a retailer, I'm not a wholesaler, but I was buying directly from the factory. So in that case, I was their first year customer. Fine. So I hope I'm able to answer to your question correctly. The first sell, the entity to which an organization sell the first, at the first layer of first interaction, that is the first tier customer. But again, we will try to focus on the first tier suppliers and the second tier suppliers, not the upstream, but the downstream of this. So moving forward again to the goals of SRM. So the goals of SRM are pretty simple. The first one and the most important one is to streamline and improve the processes. What is meant by that is, let me take a sip. It basically means to streamline and improve the processes that take place between the organization as the buyer of product and services and the businesses that supply or provide them. So in this case, the businesses would be the suppliers. The reason I'm saying businesses because it can itself be a manufacturing unit which is supplying a certain product as a raw material to your organization, you as a buyer. The second goal is the second goal of SRM is that it aims to develop a mutually beneficial relationship, and this is very important. A mutually beneficial relationship. Uh, you know, historically, it has been how would I put it? Procurement professionals, they like to squeeze their supplier to the maximum, try to get everything out of it, and that is an approach which I call, and which most of the supply chain professionals call, is the zero sum game. That is that you are getting all the sum, and your supplier is getting the zero out of that relationship. So, and this is not a mutually beneficial relationship. This is an adversary, or this is a yes, adverse relationship in which you are treating your supplier as your enemy. But once you start treating your supplier as your friend, as an extended part of your organization, that is where a mutually beneficial relationship comes into play. Uh, it has to be a win-win scenario for both the entities. The supplier is there to do business, is there to make profit, is there to provide you quality goods at the right time, at the right location, at the right price. And your relationship should be strong enough with the supplier to get the best out of the deal. And I will discuss, when I say the best out of the deal, is another goal which I will discuss. I think that is point number 4 in this slide. So coming back to this, the aims to develop a mutually beneficial relationship between the organization and its supplier, especially those that are classified as most strategic to organizations, brand, and operations. So if we look at the strategic metrics which I showed earlier, so anything, the bottleneck suppliers, they are also strategic, and also the strategic suppliers are also strategic. That in that area, you need to have a strong relationship with your suppliers. Fine. Now, moving forward, promote quality, efficiency, and innovation. So, goal of supplier relationship management is, these are very important points. It is to promote quality, efficiency, and innovations. Unless or until you involve your supplier in your processes, they won't be able to innovate. If you are just going to go to them at the last stage of the procurement cycle or a product development cycle, they will not be able to support you with innovations. They will not be able to suggest better methodology or better route to your new product, your new supply line, or to any cost optimization. If you involve them at the start, they will be really able to look into their own processes, use their technology, use their efficiency, use their capabilities to provide you the best of the best solutions, because they will treat you as a part of their own organization, because they know that in your success is their success, and we should also understand that in their success lies our success as well. So it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is a mutually beneficial relationship. So with all of this, it helps improve coordination and transparency between the buyer and the supplier. Since uh, how this happens is that you will be sharing information with them. You will be early involvement would be there. So this will definitely improve coordination and the transparency between both the entities. Now, this is what I was mentioning, that the value proposition of SRM, and that is supplier relationship management goes beyond cost savings. Do not get stuck on cost savings. Yes, that is an important part of your, as a procurement professional, as a supply chain professional. Cost savings is a definitely part, but the value that you extract, or the value that you gain from the supplier, is more important as well. Focus on the value proposition, and the cost savings will come automatically. I will give you an example over here shortly. And there was an example that we were trying to establish. There was a bottleneck raw material that we wanted to develop an alternate supplier, and a supplier we were working with our technical team, and that supplier came up with a good alternative and as per our specifications and everything. The technical data sheets were approved by by the technical team. The production run was there, and everything was done. But the price was high, and since I was looking from a very cost savings perspective, that I need to develop a better cost alternative supplier as well. So I was almost on the verge of kind of defining the supplier as a secondary supplier and not as a primary supplier because the cost was high. But good thing was that we sat down with the supplier. I gave him this feedback, and the supplier came back and he requested a meeting with our technical and production team, and we had a joint session. And the joint session, the supplier told us that yes, my cost is higher than, and we were transparent about our costing. He said, yes, my cost is higher compared to your primary supplier by approximately 17%. That is true. But my specifications, and he addressed our production team, that he asked them what was the result of the production run, the trial runs, the actual output. And in that, it was known that the productivity improved by approximately 22% on the production lines. So once we started plugging in these numbers that yes, the cost is higher, but productivity improved, the value proposition was much higher than the cost impact of it, because in that manner, that if I had to use, for example, 10 units of my primary supplier raw material, with this productivity improvement, which was 22, I had to only use 78 or 7.8 units, 22% less units. So on an overall comparison basis, he was cheaper. So on a unit to unit price, he was expensive, but on a larger, on a macro level, or on a value proposition, on a long run basis, he was much better. And since his productivity was better on the machines because of his raw material, our machine efficiency also increased. So it had multiple benefits to it. So this is how SRM works: the innovations, the quality, the efficiency, all of that drills down to the value proposition. So these were the 4 goals, in my opinion, of supplier relationship management. Now, how to approach supplier relationship management? There are always 2 ways. Uh, uh, you can be either reactive or you can be proactive. I would like to go with the proactive part. So let's have a look. Reactive approach. Managing the supplier relationships is handled in response to when a negative situation occurs. Something bad happened. Now what to do? Let's call in the suppliers. How can we now fix this issue? It's all reactive. It's a firefighting situation. That is, there's no early involvement. There is no innovation. Nothing. You are just trying to manage the situation. And once that issue is managed, you will again forget about it, and then again you will wait for another big boom to happen in your supply chain, and then again the same reactive process would start. On the other hand, I would prefer to have a more strategic approach, and supplier relationship management is a strategic concept in a supply chain. It's a strategic role. It has a very strong strategic role. Supplier relationship management. Now, when I say strategic, again, to link it to the reactive, it's a proactive approach. So a supplier relationship management is a planned approach, and it starts much before an agreement with supplier is signed. So when we say that much before, and it basically again goes back to the concept of early involvement. It's not about that when you need something, you start talking to suppliers, you start building up relationships, and you start working with them. You start sharing your ideas with them, your organization. You treat them as your extended arm, extended body part of the organization. And that is how a strong supplier relationship management can happen. So again, I urge, and I highly recommend that start looking at this topic from a strategic approach, as a proactive approach, and that is where you will be able to gain a lot of value. Okay, so before I move forward, there's one more question, and I'm trying to get it right. Thanks, Felix Glavi. Can you differentiate between up and down suppliers? I'm not very sure what do you mean by up and down suppliers. Usually, it is upstream and downstream in the supply chain, when which I was referring to earlier. The upstream of the supply chain is where on the distribution part or on the product delivery part. That for me is the upstream of the supply chain, in which the supply chain is based on demand, is supplying the products, or it's delivering the product to the wholesaler, to the retailers, to the customers. And the downstream for a supply chain is the starting point, where the interaction with the suppliers are happening with the different manufacturer or the traders, or the 5 different categories of suppliers which I just showed you. So that is my take on your question. So I hope I've been able to answer it correctly. Uh, Another question from our friend Aditya: how to handle conflicts between supplier and manufacturer even if we have signed agreements? Okay. See, by communication, as simple as that. Talk to them. Why a conflict happened? The conflict mainly happened because uh, the communication was lacking. The understanding of the other issues or the supplier issues were not there, or on the other part, the understanding from the supplier onto your issues were not there. So talk, sit together. No need to fight. Believe me. Again, zero sum strategy should not be invoked, should not be utilized. Go for the win-win. Even if it is a signed contract, try to find the right way out, unless until it's a legal issue. That is something else. But this is how I put it. If something can be amended with a win-win concept, I would still go for that purpose. But even before going into that strategy, sit with them. Maybe it's just a simple miscommunication, misalignment. And by talking, by sitting down together, by understanding the problem at hand, do not look at the how would I put it, the impacts of anything. Try to go drill down into what caused those impacts, why that disagreement has happened, and try to work around that. Fine. And again, this is again a topic that when you there's a conflict management that needs to happen, or a conflict has to it also comes into under the definition of how you negotiate with your supplier. And again, part of my procurement and beyond workshop. So that is something that I discuss extensively over there as well, that when we are doing vendor management, or when we are doing these contract management, how these things need to be tackled, and how important is communication between the entities, the supplier and the buyer. Fine. So thanks, Aditya. So now moving ahead again, so we look at the 2 approaches to supplier relationship management. So now coming to the most important part, which itself is, if you give me a second, let me try to locate something important here. So which itself is the supplier relationship management process itself. Uh, you know, it's always good to keep things clean and simple. You can have a 5-step process, you can have a 10-step process and everything. This is something which I enjoyed, which I liked during my readings on this topic. Fine. And this basically, for an introduction session onto supply relationship management, this basically depicts it pretty well. And that is, the first step is to segment your suppliers. Uh, Fine. And if you remember, if you recall the strategic matrix as well, they also segmented the suppliers into 5 categories. So segment your suppliers. So the organization identifies. So what does this segment or this step calls for is to that the organization identifies all of its suppliers and categorizes them by their importance to the business. So it may be from a risk perspective, it may be from a profit impact perspective, it might be a strategic in nature, sole source. So all of these considerations need to be done. So categorize them by their importance to the organization or to the business, thereby ensuring that the suppliers most critical to success get the right amount of attention. That is, they need to get the right amount of attention. What is the benefit that you start giving more importance to your stationery supplier, whereas your raw material supply is getting less and less importance? No, it's easier. Yes, I know. Talking to a simple vendor which supplies stationeries and consumables or the pantry items or the kitchen consumables, it's very easy. A lot of suppliers are there. You don't need to work hard on the prices and everything. You don't need to do market intelligence and all of that. But then that is not the part, that is not the role of a procurement leader. The role of a procurement leader is to understand where the organization is most exposed to risk and how to mitigate those risks. And that is where the segmentation of supplier comes in, that you segment your supplier based on your volume, your strategic nature, and all of that, different categories. Again, based on your business strategy, you need to segment them. Fine, and then approach them. So a high suppliers which are still more strategic nature, or are bottleneck suppliers, or a single source supplier, that is where you really need to give more focus. And by saying this, it doesn't at all mean that you do not give importance to your stationery supplier. You do, but less importance. Maybe you need to review them every 1-3 months, for example. But for a for a critical supplier, you might need to work with them on a very regular basis. A new vendor being inducted, maybe you need to work with them on a regular weekly basis. So again, define based on your segmentation that how closely you want to work with them. Now, once the segmentation has been done, develop a sound supply strategy. That is, in this step, the organization develops a tactical plan for how it will work with each supplier. Fine. And to ensure how it will work with each suppliers to ensure the relationships are successful and mutually beneficial. Again, a win-win game. Organizations should start with the category of supplier deemed most critical, as I mentioned earlier as well, that which are most critical, you need to focus on them. And they should be involved in your processes. Make them part of your organization. Be transparent with them, and that should be your supply strategy. Would be define how much transparent you need to be, how much involved, how open, how would I put it? How much information you will be sharing with them, how regularly you will be meeting with them, doing the evaluation, giving them feedback, working closely with them, having technical sessions with them. So develop the right supply strategy. And the third one is the most important one. A lot of strategies are made, but then again, you need to execute the strategy. You need to have a team that executes the strategy, that manages that strategy, that manages that relationship. So assign the people to tasks and continuously measure. That is the key word over here. Measure the strategy success, and that can only be measured by doing a regular performance evaluation of your supplier. Are they meeting the needed requirements? Are they meeting the needed metrics? And these metrics are defined in your, when you establish your relationship with the vendor, when you do a contract with them, and it's always better to have these written down and signed. Fine. So this is the supply relationship process, the SRM process. Now, we will now move into, now we are almost coming to a closure to our workshop for the day. So this is the second last topic, the strategies to enhance supply relationship management. Now, how can we do that? It's not just about writing a contract and telling a supplier, oh, you are my key supplier, you are critical to my operations, but the actions that you do, that means a lot. So let's go through the different strategies. Suppliers are not just vendors, they are your partners. Remember this word, partners. Treat them as your partners. Fine. And how do you treat a partner? Your good friend, your or your spouse, your spouse is a partner. I'm not saying that your supplier is a spouse, but try to visualize this, that you are honest with them, you establish trust with them, you mean what you say, your words are your actions. So all of that is important. The second one is use technology, and technology helps bring in transparency, bring in trust. So try to use technology, try to use e-procurement tools, try to use e-bidding, try to use supplier portals. Be transparent with your suppliers so that they never get a feel that you are not being honest, or you are not being open with, or the information being shared with one supplier is not the same with the other supplier. So be transparent. On time payments, this is important. It does not mean fine. On time payments means that what you committed, pay then. It might be 120 days, it might be 90 days, it might be cash, it might be any credit terms that you agree with your supplier. Honor that. Because if you do not honor that, fool me once, fine, that I don't remember the whole thing, but if I'm a supplier and I give you an excellent price and I give you an excellent credit term, that which is, for example, I say, okay, I give you an excellent price that you are wanting, and I give you 30 days credit or even 60 days credit for that. But on the 60th day, I expect as a supplier to receive my payment. Fine. And believe me, I'm having this issue right now with an organization right now, that they owe me approximately a certain chunk of my payment for the last, now it's what, almost 3 months now. They are overdue. And that basically had disrupted my relationship with them. So what you commit, pay. And for example, if you do not pay in 60 days, which was committed, the supplier will continue to supply because they are in the business of supplying. But maybe they will not keep the price in the next transaction. They might increase because they would like to, build in the impact of delayed payments in their pricing, because they have to financially secure themselves. So who is the loser at the end of the day? By delaying payment, you might be trying to save something on your first interaction or your first transaction, but believe me, on a long term, the buyers are the losers in this scenario. It's not a win-win scenario. It's a zero-sum game, because in the second transaction, the vendor will secure its payment from a financial perspective. They will build in that impact in their prices. The fourth one is strong and deep relationships. Fine. And I have continuously emphasized on that extensively, that establish relationships, and these relationships are based on trust, based on transparencies, and based on early involvement. Value for money. I mentioned this as a goal of the SRM as well, that look beyond the cost. Fine. The cost savings, the discounts, they are a byproduct of SRM. Fine. They are the byproduct of the value proposition that you gain out of your engagement with the supplier at a strategic level. So go for value for money, what you're getting as a value proposition, the totality, on a service level, on a relationship level, on a price level, definitely on a quality level. Fine. So look beyond that. Detailed agreements. I think the example that the question that which I hope I'm getting the name right, Kratek. Let me just check. Which was there are a lot of questions. I will come to those questions very quickly. So, anyways, to avoid conflicts, ensure that your contracts, they, do not leave anything to chance. Anything that you discuss, put that into writing. Put your performance metrics into writing. Put your delivery terms into writing. Put everything. What would be the Incoterms? That into writing. Everything. Do not leave anything out of an agreement, even if you think that it might not be needed. But if you have discussed, better to put that into a detailed agreement. Fine. To avoid, it's not about that you do not trust your verbal interaction, but it's all about that tomorrow no conflict should happen, and you have everything in writing to go back to. Risk evaluation. Risk evaluation, I would link it to risk mitigation as well, that once you are in a strategic environment with your suppliers, you are evaluating risk, you are protecting your organization from risk, because now you have market intelligence directly from the horse's mouth, from your suppliers. You would know in time if some, prices are going to go up. For example, recently steel prices went up tremendously because of a global demand increase, container shortages, different areas in which steel demand was increased, and the supply and demand gap came into being. So a lot of if organization which were not having, and I have an example that a friend of mine was caught off guard because they were not having a strong relationship. If they had a strong relationship that with their suppliers, that they would have known that there's a possibility that prices would go up, and they would be able to mitigate those by buying in advance or hedging the stocks. So risk evaluation is important uh, part of the supplier relationship management. Well-defined process. I defined the process, the three-step process. It can be more detailed. Segment your suppliers, define your strategies, and how to implement them. So follow the steps. Think global, act local. Very important part. You know, try to be, when you are dealing with global suppliers, try to be, how would I put it? Uh, be I'm not getting the right word. Uh, be sensitive to their local requirements as well. Be sensitive how they operate in a local environment as well. So when you are dealing with on a global level, for example, dealing with Europeans, Germans, they do not like to be called after, for example, 5 p.m. They don't. So be sensitive about them. They will not answer usually. That is how they work. Whereas we Pakistanis, or this part of the subcontinent, they are always ready to cater to this. Japanese have a different way of style. They go, they interact in a different manner. Americans, they interact in a very different manner. So when you are interacting on a global level, be sensitive about to their local traditions and their local customs as well. And last but not the least, that is to get everyone on board within your organization. I gave an example earlier that my technical team, my production team, and everything. So the supplier relationship management is not just about you as a purchaser interacting with your supplier. No, your entity, all the stakeholders, they need to be on board. Why you are for doing a SRM process for this particular supplier. Everyone has to be on board. It has to be looked from all perspectives. Fine. So these are the key strategies that can help you enhance your supplier relationship management. Let me try to take a few questions while I can. Where is my mouse? Yes, here it is. Okay. So this is from Talha Faruqi. Hi, Assalamu alaikum, Talha. Stable supplier with good price compares with new supplier with stable quality. Which is preferable considering SRM methodology? I like your question, Talha. Very good question. Okay, let me repeat. Stable supplier with good price compares with new supplier with stable quality. Again, Talha, I'm assuming that your first supplier, stable supplier, that is, they are able to provide you the supply stably. But since you are focusing on good price, then I would say the quality might be a questionable part of that proposition. If that is so, then, talk to them. I would never say to end a relationship with any of your supplier. Develop both of them. Define a primary, define a secondary supplier. Engage with both of them. You never know, something happens with the first supplier and you are able to fill the gap with the second supplier. So that is the SRM methodology, that develop your relationship, keep the business going on, and obviously a higher quality. Look it from a value proposition. Does that higher quality translate into cost savings for you? Do not look just at the dollar value of your proposition or your interaction. Look at the value of it. So I hope from that perspective, if you look at this question of your this scenario, you will be able to understand more of it. So then question from Sahar Fode. The aspect of slavery has been identified throughout supply chain. What will be the fallback or strategies for organization to mitigate such risks with its suppliers? Good questions. Slavery, bonded labor, child labor, all of these things are or working with from in countries where there is how would I put wrong practices when it comes to supply chain. Fine. One thing which I do with organization when I'm providing them consultancy is to develop a code of conduct for suppliers. That is, you make them sign on an agreement on a code of conduct that they will not engage in such practices. Do background checks of your suppliers. Is there any news or any look into their suppliers as well? Are they dealing with any supplier which has a history of wrong practices? So again, you need to do your due diligence, and it is not to be done only once. It has to be done like in the strategies I said, risk evaluation. So this is a very good aspect to that risk evaluation. Do your risk evaluation on a continuous basis. Deploy, do talk with them, look into different aspect of it. So that would help you. Fine. From Iswar, upstream refers to suppliers and downstream refers to customers. Well, that is also one point of view, but from an organization perspective, this is how I look at that. For me, the upstream are the customers and the downstream are the the suppliers. That is how I look at it. So yes, it can be. I was going through a course in which this is how it was defined. You are right as well, but again, it's a matter of perspective as well. So again, nothing is wrong. You are right as well. Good. Okay, so good question from Muhammad Aldini. What is the benefit of knowing the second tier supply and what areas should be evaluated? Okay, good question. The example which I was giving earlier, I am part, for example, if I am part of a petrochemical industry, oil and gas, and I am producing lubricants. So one of my key suppliers are the supplier of the drums in which I will pack my lubricant or my oil and deliver it to the market. Fine. So the drum supply, the steel drum supplier is my first tier supplier. But since the second tier supplier in this case would be the steel manufacturer who is supplying the steel or from where my drum supplier is procuring a steel. Fine. Since steel is a commodity, fine. So that has a direct impact on my supply chain. If the steel prices go up or there's a shortage, it directly impacts my how would I put it? My supply chain. I was working in Oman for one of the biggest traders, fine, in the building materials and electricals. And one of the largest commodity or the largest material that we used to trade in or through all our 400 plus trading outlets around all across Oman, that was cables. Now, it's very easy. I place an order of, for example, I need this much 4 by 25. I need this much 16 by 2 core 16, and this and that, and the and the quantity would come. But in this case, we were constantly looking into the second tier supplier, which is the copper. And we used to ask our the supplier for cables to book the copper for us. So they used to hit the copper at the price that we requested them. So this is where the second tier supply is coming into play. So I am telling them that book the copper for my order when the LME price, LME is London Metal Exchange, when the price is this much. So I was directly interacting or directly defining at what price the raw material my supplier needs to buy. So that is important. Okay, mashallah. Long list one. How to deal with suppliers who end up compromising on quality. Always have second source, third source, fourth source, whatever you may. Quality is important. Give them one warning, reject their material, let them have the financial loss. Do not pay for them because it did not comply to the quality standards which were defined and agreed. If they continuously compromise on quality, blacklist them till they improve themselves. Do not completely outright reject them, but put them on evaluation, for example, that unless or until you reduce your quantities, you ask them to provide you more samples till they are able to fulfill the quality requirements. There are many ways of handling this. Next question. From the previous question was from again, it's a difficult name for me to pronounce. I don't know if T is silent in this or not. Sungi Moyo or Tisungi Moyo. Thank you for your question. Now, next question is from Moses Mudawidi. Thank you for your question. And that is, a long-term customer complains to you about product prices and wants to end your business relationship. What will you do? Okay. Basically, the customer-facing part can be customer service. It can also be sales. But yes, supply chain controls the cost part of the products as well. Till the time I was part of the corporate supply chain of different organization, I had one strong rule that I used to go and meet our key customers with my sales guys. As a supply chain head, I used to go and at least once every month with one customer, I used to go and sit with them and listen to their problem or their feedback, positive, negative, anything, everything is constructive. You take it, you do that. So if a long-term customer, first of all, the key word is long-term. So something is really wrong. And nothing is there which a simple communication, a simple sit down and try to understand the problem cannot solve. Give them the commitment. They are talking to you about product prices. Look at why the product prices are high. Is it that they just want a higher discount? Maybe you can provide them a higher discount if they increase their quantities. So a lot of sales pitch needs to be built in. But if your price, as an organization, your price is higher compared to competition, then you need to look, is it because your quality is higher? Or is it just that your supply chain is wrong? So again, you need to understand the actual underlying problem that the supplier is having and try to address that. Right? Muhammad Said, good question. How to implement supply evaluation? It's very simple. Define the metrics. When you're doing contract, you talk about what quality will it do. Will this supplier, when you place the order in 5 days, in 1 week, immediate, will they be keeping any inventory there? Will they have you discuss on any vendor managed inventory? Anything that you discuss, any ground rules that you define, that becomes the performance metrics for the supplier. Fine. And based on that, you start evaluating each and every interaction or each and every transaction that you do with your supplier on a periodic level and document that, score that, provide it weightage and score them and share this score with your suppliers. So this is how you implement a good supplier evaluation. Fine. So I think for the time being, the questions are ended. So let's go to the last part of our presentation, our workshop, which is basically the advantages of supplier relationship management. So the advantages are very simple. It develops trust and confidence between the buyer and the supplier. Fine. And from the start of this workshop, I have been telling you this, that trust is important. Build confidence, build a strong relationship, win-win proposition. Supplier roles changes to being partner of the organization. So a supplier moves away from the traditional supplier vendors and develops into a partner, an extended arm, extended body part of the organization. Allows you to take better advantage of supply capabilities. Very important part. So if you have a close contact with your supplier, if you understand their capabilities, their fine, and you are involving them, then you can take better advantage of their supply capabilities, and they will do, believe me, they will provide you solutions, they will do innovations for you. And that is the key to success. Reduces cost and creates value through win-win proposition. I think uh, really give it, I have talked a lot about this point throughout this workshop. And it ensures supply chain continuity. Very important, very important. A question which I put across in a lot of discussions that I've had, uh, over the last 1 year, especially through the COVID period, was that during the COVID period, a lot of lockdowns happen, a lot of supply disruptions happen and everything. And I have asked, different supply chain profession, different organizations from different countries, different part of the world, that how did you cope with it? How did you ensure your continuity? And they said that it was because of our strategic supplies that were able to continue our operations. So just imagine, strategic suppliers, and because they had a good understanding, sound relationships, fine, and they were able to support these manufacturing concerns, these organizations, so the suppliers were able to support them. So this is how important this point is. That is, and it ensures supply chain continuity. Uh, Limits or mitigate supply chain risks. We talked a lot about this. Fine. It increases responsiveness of the suppliers. If they know what is your demand, if you're sharing your demand plans with them, if you're sharing your forecast with them, you are being transparent with them, they will be producing the right quantities at the right time for you, and they will take the burden on themselves, and their responsiveness to you would be of top-notch order. Believe you me. Visibility into, yes, this comes from the example I gave for the steel. Visibility into future prices, and based on that, you will be able to hedge against any price volatility. So this is a very key advantage, that you have, and you have an input of how the future would look when it comes to different prices of commodities or raw materials, what is coming up, if there's any risk, and you will be able to mitigate that risk. So this basically brings our session to an end. I will be taking any questions if there are anything more. Just to let you know, you can take a snapshot of you, or you can scan this QR code. This is a link to the quiz, and this is also available in the description part of this YouTube session. So if you go into the description, this link would be available, or I will just post it over here as well in the chat box as well for you to copy. Complete the quiz. Basically 6 questions, score at least 80%. That means you need to score at least 5 right. And you will be then eligible for the certificate for this workshop. And please, when you fill in the data in the form, put your full name, complete name as you would like to be on the form, on the certificate. And it will take a few days for the certificates to be emailed to all of you. So please make sure that you put the correct email in the form. And the last but not the least, let me also share this with you guys, just a second. Let me put it over here. This is the quiz link. Right, so I have posted it on the comment section as well. Last but not the least, guys, do subscribe to the channel. More events, and I'll try to do once every month such a tutorial on different topics of supply chain. So a little support from you by liking this video, by sharing this video or this session, and subscribing to the channel will go a long way for encouragement for me. And I thank you all. So if you have any more questions, I would be more than happy to take those right now. If not, then we can conclude this session. So I will wait for a few moments. So if there's any question, fine. But it has been, I hope I was able to share the concept as an introductory session. Again, this is not a detailed session. This is just an introduction, and I wanted everyone to appreciate how important supplier relationship management is, and it needs to give in its due importance, and it goes a long way. It creates the right value for the organization. It provides competitive advantage, fine. And once you start implementing and once you start looking at from this perspective, believe me, it will go a long way for your organization. So I believe there are no more questions, so I conclude it over here. Thank you very much for listening it. I appreciate your time. Take care. And again, for all my Muslim audience, a very happy Ramadan Kareem to you. And again, a message for everyone: please stay safe. The second wave, and in some countries and many countries, the third wave is coming in on the COVID pandemic. Please stay safe, wear masks, maintain social distance, work from home where possible, do online learnings, and please take care of your loved ones and your neighbors and everyone. This is a time that we all need to be together, and we need to fight this pandemic together. I thank you. Hira, thank you for your kind comment. Mohammed, thank you. Talha, I really appreciate it for your nice comment. And Moses, Deborah William, thank you for joining in. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone who joined in. Okay, take care. Felix, can I get the PDF format of it? My friend, for these free workshops, I don't share the presentations. I'm really, I apologize for that, but that is a certain my own principle. This whole tutorial is available on YouTube, so you can refer to it anytime you want to. Hi, Adil, my good friend, now based in Canada, a true logistics professional. Thank you. Thank you, Adil, for joining in. Thanks, Roma, Mohammed again. And Mohammed said, which book you recommend for supply relationship? For supply relationship, my friend, read anything. Read articles on the internet. No one book can fulfill your criteria. Read. I would say read whatever you find. There's a lot of material available on the internet on every topic. Go through different articles. Go through HBR, Harvard Business Review articles on this. There are a lot of case studies available. So read. This is the best thing I can advise you. Thanks, Moses. Thank you. Take care. I will end this now. Thank you. And from John as well. Thank you. I like it. Somehow people like to call me Norman. My name is Noman, Noman, but I always appreciate Norman. Fine. No problem. Take care. Bye-bye.